How's it going, people? Racing has had a massive impact on the technology that we see in road cars today, and none more so than one of my favourite forms of racing, Formula One. This kind of makes sense, as Formula One is supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsports engineering within a set of regulations, and they've given us important basic pieces of car technology like paddle shifters, adaptive suspension, advanced traction control, carbon ceramic brakes, and even rear view mirrors. So in this video, I want to have a look at some specific cars that have some crazy F1 technology applied to them that you just don't see elsewhere on the roads. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more wiki car content. If the video gets 1,000 likes, I'll do some more F1 style content videos if they're interesting to you. But without further ado, let's get into the video. There will be plenty of high-performance, expensive cars in this video that use the most interesting and different F1 technologies. But I wanted to start with the Renault Clio Renault Sport 197, a car you can easily pick up for under $5,000. Renault have a history of making F1 special edition cars like the Clio Williams and the Renault Megane 230 F1 R26, but the 197 RS actually uses some basic F1 tech to assist in aero and cooling, a first for hot hatches. The rear diffuser wasn't just to look good, it actually worked to increase the car's aero and reduce drag, and at the front the aero had the dual purpose of creating downforce and extracting hot air from the engine and directing it around the sides of the car. It also had specific F1 inspired brake air ducts that brought cool air into the wheel well to help with brake cooling, something you'd usually see on F1 cars, and it's a thing that Renault actually protested Racing Point for during the 2020 season for being too similar to Mercedes. Pretty cool for a Clio. KERS, or Kinetic Energy Recovery System, features on a bunch of cars on this list, but a basic version of this is available on multiple cars, in many cases those that rely specifically on electric energy, like the Renault Zoe. That's even after, back in 2009, Mercedes said that F1's KERS tech wasn't useful for road cars. The BMW i8 uses KERS in a similar way to F1 cars when put into sport mode. When accelerating, braking, or even just easing off the accelerator, the car tries to utilize the kinetic energy produced to keep batteries charged and ultimately produce more electrical power and put it down to the wheels. It's like a little cycle of energy creating movement, creating energy, which the car uses for movement. Very clever F1 tech that's been around for quite a while now and is on loads of other cars on this list too in different ways. Let's step it up a gear and look at the hallowed McLaren F1, a goat of the car world, which wasn't named without purpose, as on release in 1992 it came with both current and banned F1 technology. The central driving position was meant to mimic where you sit in an F1 car, same with the speed tail we see today, and it was the first production car to have a carbon fiber monocoque chassis like we see in F1 cars. It doesn't just provide additional protection in a crash, it also weighs significantly less than the equivalent aluminium or steel chassis, which is obviously important when trying to get a car to go fast and handle well. There are now plenty of road cars that have an F1 inspired carbon chassis to some degree, like the Alfa Romeo 4C, pretty much every production McLaren, and many other supercars as well, but the F1 was the first to take that Formula One tech and make it road legal. Probably more special than the chassis is the ground effect fans. The F1 doesn't have a fat wing on it to produce downforce. Instead, like the Clio, it has a rear diffuser as well as an underbody designed specifically to exploit ground effect, which is basically using the ground to be part of the aerodynamic system of the car. The famous Brabham BT46 F1 car, designed by Gordon Murray, took this to the next level by using a fan to increase the suction to the floor, which was so ridiculously effective it was deemed unfair literally by the Brabham team themselves, and the tech was banned. The McLaren F1, also designed by Gordon Murray, uses two fans to do the same thing. It's genuinely a simple but hugely effective idea, basically genius. And to have this used on a road car is just insane. Let's change one letter now and look at the McLaren P1, a more modern car with some more modern F1 tech. It uses KERS like the i8 as well as almost F1 level brakes in terms of stopping power, and one of the most advanced active suspension setups ever seen on a road car. All very good F1 inspired tech, but the most obvious and unique piece of tech is in that rear wing. When the car was released, this wing was part of an aero setup that meant the car had the most downforce of any car on sale, and the wing uses active aero, which is banned in F1 to achieve this. But more interestingly, at the push of a button you can enable DRS, or drag reduction system, just like F1 cars have, to flatten the wing and reduce drag by 23%. And the best part is, there are no DRS zones on the road, so you can just hit DRS coming out of Sainsbury's for all I care. If you've ever been on Ollie Webb's Instagram, or maybe maybe watched the Top Gear episode where they tried to find the best taxi, you may well have seen the BAC Mono. As a single-seater, almost open-wheeler with an FIA-compliant rollover structure, it definitely looks like it's heading down the F1 route, but in reality it actually uses construction principles from DTM, or German touring cars if DTM makes no sense to you. Its purpose is to be a road-legal track car, and it definitely fulfills this brief given it got second at the time on the Top Gear test track, beaten only by the Pagani Huayra. And though you can draw many parallels between this and an F1 car, kinda like the old Caparo T1, there are two unique features I wanted to mention. The F1 style cockpit and steering wheel are both relatively hard to find in road legal cars, and the Mono has both. The cockpit area hugs you in nice and tight, in a proper safety cell, just like the safety cell you would have seen in Romain Grosjean's crash. In a car as exposed to the elements as this one is what you might hope for to keep you safe. I wonder how long before it gets a halo. In that cockpit you also have a wheel that goes above and beyond a road car's wheel, giving you data you wouldn't find in a normal car, but would be relevant to racing around a track. I just love that it looks very F1-esque personally, but it's also quite funny to think that you have all the relevant buttons for driving on roads, like indicators and a horn. I hope you're enjoying learning about F1 tech in road cars so far. If you are, make sure you've hit the subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. Like as well if you haven't already, and follow me on Instagram at CarsWithJB, I would really appreciate it. Thanks. Ferrari are synonymous with F1, having competed in more races than any other team in history. Being a road and race car manufacturer means they can take some of their racing principles and apply them to their road cars, and if you're into Ferraris then you've probably heard about the F1 gearbox. In 1997 the F355 F1 Berlinetta was the first Ferrari to offer the F1 gearbox, which derived from the semi-automatic gearbox Ferrari had developed for F1 since 1979 and had first seen the track in 1989 with Nigel Mansell in Brazil, where he won the Grand Prix. In the F355 it used paddles with an electro-hydraulic system to shift gears instead of the standard stick or autos of the past. This wasn't just a success in terms of applying F1 tech to a road car, it signalled a potential end for manual supercars full stop, as everyone wanted a piece of the flappy paddles. This F1 box has been seen on other Ferraris since, but it was the F355 that first got it. Sticking with the Ferrari theme, the F50 received an engine developed directly from the V12 used in the 1990 Ferrari 641 F1 car driven by Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell. In the F1 car it was a 3.5 litre V12, and in the F50 it had a 4.7 litre V12, but both were built from the same basic unit, so this is even closer to being the real F1 engine than in the case of the Carrera GT, which has an engine that was originally built for F1, cancelled, repurposed for Le Mans, and then found its way into the CGT. Taking this idea of putting an F1 powertrain into a road car is the Mercedes AMG ONE, which used to be called the Project One. The original idea seemed to be to literally take the F1 engine and throw it into a road legal car, but the tune has changed slightly, to the point the actual production car should have a turbocharged 1.6 litre V6 with hybrid motors, like F1 cars, but is maybe less likely to actually have F1 powertrains than we originally expected. That said, there's still plenty of other F1 style features and tech to look forward to on it, like the adjustable steering wheel with pedal box, carbon fibre support structure visible throughout the cockpit, and the F1 derived exhaust pipe with a large outlet and then two smaller openings. Kinda cheating with this one as it hasn't actually been released yet to the roads, but couldn't talk about F1 tech without mentioning this car. Like some of the other cars on this list, the LaFerrari uses a type of KERS called high KERS to maximise power and performance, inspired by the KERS system in their F1 cars. The idea is that it supplements the screaming V12 with torque where required, so you get more constant power. Ferrari say it provides very comparable figures to the F1 cars, including similar torque and efficiency figures, as well as limited power loss. But more interestingly than the KERS system is their banned F1 technology called continuously variable length intake tracks. Simply put, the air intake tracks change in length depending on where the engine is in the rev range, to always provide the engine with the optimal air to fuel ratio for efficient combustion, which ultimately enables peak power output at all RPMs. It also has a sort of supercharging effect, and though we saw this on some older F1 cars in the mid-2000s, it was ultimately banned in the sport and repurposed for some road-going cars like the LaF. In terms of F1 links, this car needs no introduction. The Aston Martin Valkyrie was conceived by legendary designer Adrian Newey and Red Bull F1 team boss Christian Horner, amongst some execs from Aston Martin, as part of the relationship relationship between the F1 team and the British brand. Red Bull, Advanced Technologies and Aston Martin focused on creating a car with 1:1 power to weight ratio, clear design principles from F1 in terms of aesthetics, and as much detail and effort into every last feature to ensure it was as close to an F1 car for the road as possible. But the key thing I'm interested in is the aerodynamics. If we remember back to the early 2010s, Red Bull were dominant through their incredible use of aero to make their cars grip the track in a way their competitors simply couldn't. In the Valkyrie, by significant abuse of the Venturi effect with an underfloor that is so open you can fit a human under the car, it produces up to 1,814 kilograms of downforce at high speeds. As the car only weighs just over 1,000 kilograms, that means you could theoretically drive it upside down, like an F1 car. On top of this, as the car has to be as light and focused as possible, the driver's seats are molded to fit the driver, so you best hope your body shape remains relatively similar throughout your ownership of it. This is also a good way of Aston Martin stopping people from flipping the cars for profit, which they have done contractually anyway. So I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you did, make sure you hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it. Massive thank you to the patrons as always, and to you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.